Good morning. After 1 year to be elected as the Secretary General of UNWTO, His Excellency Mr. Zurab Pololikashvili is going to give us his point of view and about 1 year for leading the organization, and also what are the new perspective and new strategy to be taken out. Thank you.
Thank you and good morning. And it's a pleasure to participate in this interview after 1 year. First of all, I want to express our condolences to the families what is happening now in the south part of Africa, in Mozambique, especially in Zimbabwe and Malawi. This is disaster and this is over, and we are ready to support and we are ready to be with families, with all nations, and I hope to see the better situation in very fast and in upcoming days, because what's happened, it's always, unfortunately, we can't do a lot of things against the nature, but sometimes, in these cases, we need to be more united, and our thoughts are with the families, and again, our condolences to all families of the countries who had this very important and very strong disaster in the last days. To sum up, the first year my first year in United Nations World Tourism Organization, my promise and my priority, starting from the very first day, was to concentrate and to organize some concrete activities and to support the African continent like the future of tourism. And we announced many times that Africa is the future of tourism and the tourism industry, and we see that it's one of the fastest growing economies, one of the fastest growing continent in terms of tourism. Our idea is and was to know better and to understand better the needs of our member states. For that reason, we, with the leadership of African ministers, we started to identify the top priorities for African continent, and we had several very important and long meetings with them. First of all, we made a concrete plan and priorities on base of very active participation. I want to use this forum thanks to all African ministers who participated in that project, and at the end of the day, after 3-4 months very hard working time, we identify 10 priorities, and we know where we need to support, where we know where to act, and we know a very clear plan how to develop tourism in Africa, to have sustainable development on African continent, to have more tourists in African continent, and for that we know and we identify 10 priorities how to do it, how to act during next 3, 4, 5 years. All our ideas and all our priorities were in parallel aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals and Agenda 2030, and I'm sure that this will be one of the most successful and most interesting, nice showcase for another sectors, for another continents, and I'm really very proud, and again many thanks to each minister who participated very actively in this process.
Before we move forward, what about the statistic on tourist worldwide movement and the forecast specifically for the next 5 years or decade in Africa?
One of the most important priority of this 10 priority plan is statistics. First of all, we need to improve statistics in all continents. There is a huge demand, and we've done several very interesting projects with African countries, and we have still ongoing 12 projects on African continent, and next 3-4 years we are going to collaborate with the domestic statistics centers to improve them, to support them, how to measure and how to measure better, because without measurement it's very difficult to forecast the future of many aspects. And we have, as I mentioned, ongoing projects in several countries, and we are going to be very active next few years. Regarding the statistics and forecasts which we have on our African continent, we had in 2018 4% of growth, and again Africa is one of the fastest growing economy, and we still have a forecast for next 3-4 years that this growth will continue. Why? Because there are many big and huge infrastructural projects. Many countries are investing in infrastructure. Only the announcement of Chinese government that they are going to invest 60 billion US dollar in the next 3-4 years give us perspective to announce and to say that, and also the forecast we have, which so each country, we truly believe that the growth of tourism inflow will be 3.4% for next coming years.
The 2019 FITU edition saw the 10th anniversary of Nuestro, and with naturally the participation of the major numbers of African ministers. So what have been acquired since then, and what have been new challenges discussed around the tourism in the African continent?
First of all, we are very glad to have the 10th anniversary of Investor. Investor became the flagship and already brand of FITUR, which is one of the most important international fairs, especially for African continent. And every year we have more and more interest from African ministers and African governments, but at the same time from European companies and European investors. This year we had 10th anniversary, and it was first time when we announced some concrete projects, and this year especially with collaboration with NEPAD. And as you know, we are focused a lot on innovation. It was first time when we announced first competition on African continent, and we identify the best projects on African continent, and starting from next decade we can attract, and we promise, and we have already 10 best projects from African continent who will pitch and who will come to Madrid with Instituto de Empresa, and they will have a possibility to pitch their projects, to meet with concrete investors. We are ready to support them to internationalize their projects, and the projects are very interesting and brilliant, and I'm sure that this tradition will continue, and next year we are going to do another bigger competition because we already have experience, and I think this was very successful and very interesting. Investor with concrete projects, with concrete financial support, and next year we are going to do bigger in innovation terms to support entrepreneurs and startups on African continent.
So, how is the UNWTO facing its adaptation to the new technologies and in the industry, and train the travelers to go along with a new habit?
Today, tourism sector is moving around the digital products, the digital transformation, and again, this was one of the most important priority for us to support and to promote and to help African entrepreneurs to export new technologies, new projects, and I think our role is to be closer with the African entrepreneurs, and that's why our TTAs, Tourism Tech Adventures, which we organized first time and for Africa continent, it was during Investor, and next year we are going to do it on the ground in African countries, will be a huge success, and it will support local entrepreneurs to develop their business models, to develop their skills, to develop their educational part. As you know, we announced this year like a year of education, and there is one of the most demanding products in tourism, not only African continent, worldwide speaking, and we are very glad to see the activity from African ministers and African government, and I'm sure that next year we will have many successful projects on ground, and we will have an opportunity to attract investors, to attract more business and educational entities on African region to use at the end of the day to create new jobs, because job creation is one of the most important priority for our organization, and also it's very important for African continent.
the first caravan on sustainable and responsible tourism held in Brazzaville. What are the reiterated organization 10-point strategy for Africa to be supported with members and government?
First of all, I want to thank the government of Morocco and government of Congo who organized first caravan. This is absolutely pilot project for us and for them as well, but this is very interesting and important initiative, how to support leadership in governments and how to support communication between private and governmental sector. I think we had very successful first edition of this very interesting projects. We all agree that we will continue this dynamic and we will continue the service of caravan in other countries, and this gives opportunity to countries to share experiences, because at the end of the day tourism is about experiences, and it was again very successful meeting. We had numbers of very interesting participants from all over the world. Next caravan I hope we will have in Morocco, and we will continue this series, which is very interesting, and many thanks again to both governments to support the caravan all around the African continent.
By the end of March 2019 of this month, the first UNWTO ICO Ministerial Conference Tourism and Air Transport in Africa will take place in Cape Verde. So what are the expectations fed from this meeting?
Again, when we talked and we discussed the priorities, top priorities, how to develop tourism on African continent, one of the most hot and important issue was connectivity. So for that reason we decided to organize first connectivity conference for African region, and I think that ICAO is one of the best partners with whom we can discuss, and this is first conference ever we organized, and I'm sure that this will be the platform where we can discuss all possibilities, how to have more connectivity on African continent, how to connect African continent with other regions, how to attract more international airlines and to attract them to the African continent, because without connectivities, without direct flights, there is no business and there is no development of tourism sector. I'm sure that we will have very interesting and dynamic discussions there. We had already confirmation of more than 30 ministers, which is a big number for us, and I'm sure that their participation and their leadership, that's what we need. We will have also, from another hand, ministers from transport sector, and it will give all possibilities to find a solution how to increase numbers of direct flights with the region. And I'm sure that after this conference, this tradition we will maintain, we will copy and do same kind of events in other regions, but same time to continue next year on African continent.
Last question will be, the UNWTO is called to be a parent organization of ECOSOC. So how do you identify this common point?
I forgot to mention another huge asset which African continent has, and it's never been mentioned. It's culture. I think that culture is the future thing we need all together to promote for African continent, and for that reason I was really surprised when I attended our common conference with UNESCO in Istanbul last December. We had more than 15 ministers coming from Africa to promote their culture activities and their culture heritage, and culture is becoming and is one of the biggest part of tourism, and many people are traveling to see the culture and to share experiences with local people, with local gastronomy, with local cultural heritage and local traditions, local history. So I think this is another asset we are going to promote in Africa. We call it branding, and in branding we mean many things: culture, history, identity, authenticity, and these are all things which we want to put together and to promote Africa like a new and old touristic destination.
Thank you. Also, the last question will be, what would you say to the followers, the readers, and the watchers of our platform, Ibis Africa Review, our platform and magazine, Ibis Africa Review? What would you tell them about Africa tourism?
First of all, to discover Africa and to travel. Africa is very diverse. There are absolutely different countries with different people, with different traditions and different cultures, and this is absolutely new world to discover. And I'm sure that, and that's why I mentioned many times that Africa is the future of tourism. Many people, they don't know Africa as well, and they have another thoughts about Africa, but this is one of the most attractive and one of the most amazing continent in the world, and I'm sure that we have still many things to do. We have many things and huge space for tourism in Africa, and upcoming 10, 15 or 20 years we can do many interesting projects, and that's why we are, and that's why we need more activities and more connectivity, less visas, more investments in infrastructure, more investments from private sector, more hotels, and all this will make more attractive African continent to visit, to enjoy there.
Thank you very much for having us and for answering to our question. And we hope to, in a few months, to have you, to meet you again to talk about some objective new action plans.
Thank you very much for us again. These 10 priorities are not only a project. We need to execute it, we need to act. That's why it's impossible to do it alone. That's why we need on board African ministers, not only ministers, ministries, and I'm sure that we will change a lot of things in the next coming years. And I feel this power, I feel this energy with my African colleagues and my African friends, and I'm sure that in coming next decade we can do many interesting projects with our colleagues and our friends and brothers and sisters.
Thank you very much.